Hey, Kratom Quitters. Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. My name is Libby. I'm here with my co-host, Jacob. Jacob, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Libby?
I'm doing all right.
All right.
Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. Same.
I know we've got a really interesting interview lined up for today. And for the intro, I figured we could talk about the idea that I'm not an addict because XYZ hasn't happened to me yet. And I know this one feels really interesting to me because at least through like the beginning times that I went through recovery, I still don't have a lot of consequences. So there was a part of me that would compare myself to other people that would be, maybe in the rooms of AA or NA that were like, oh, I wrecked my car, I lost my job, I got divorced, like all these things. And I was in my head, like, none of that happened to me.
Yeah.
There's an addict part of my brain that's like, well, am I really an addict if I didn't have any negative consequences? And what I had to come to realize was that I have a different tolerance for negative consequences than maybe someone else might. And like my rock bottom looked way different, but like for me, I think it was emotionally similar where I was just like really at the end of my rope. And I'd had enough, and it like I don't need to get a DUI or get a divorce in order to like really be over it and like feel like I can't continue like this. So yeah, I can relate to the comparison part. What about you?
Yeah, same. It's interesting. I have a very, very similar viewpoint. Like you, I was able to, for the most part, maintain, like I also didn't get divorced. I maintained a relationship there, although I did put significant strain on it through a series of addictions, which we can talk about if we want, but never lost a job. In fact, I got promoted when I was using Kratom to a director level at a tech company, which I don't think is easy to necessarily do. Not that it's all that hard either, to be honest. But all those things, like it was like financial success, work success, marriage success. And with Kratom, it was really interesting because it wasn't even like with alcohol where like I could see those things coming. I had a conversation with someone back when I was getting sober from alcohol, but it was relevant for Kratom too. And it was like, it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, that hasn't happened yet, but it probably could happen. I've also lived for most of my life. I lived in major cities with good public transportation, at least from like a U.S. standpoint. So I would take the subway to work, and like if I went to a bar or was taking a lot of Kratom and was tired or even maybe pseudo nodding or something, I didn't have to drive. So that also kind of played into my story a bit. But the one thing I also wanted to mention too is that I used to think like a lot of things that happened to me in my 20s weren't necessarily like a fault of my own or of my addiction, but in hindsight, I definitely think differently now. I'll give you an example. I was in a long-term relationship with someone, and they cheated on me, and I used to just mostly prescribe blame to them, but not look at my own actions that probably led someone to feel like this relationship isn't worth maintaining. Now, I think there's a better way to end it than that, but that's a whole other topic for a whole other podcast. But sticking to the addiction point, it's like I couldn't see those things when I was in the middle of my addiction, but once I got sober, I could easily look at how my behavior, and I could put a string of incidents together that could show how my drinking and using was essentially enabling my destruction. And I could see the same thing starting to happen with Kratom, although it was a lot less because it's such a like weird functional drug. Yeah.
So you're saying in retrospect, some things that happened potentially were consequences, but they didn't appear that way in the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say with Kratom too, there's some things I see in hindsight that I didn't think were problems either. Like my decision making wasn't, operating at the best level. I'm trying to think of a good example of that. Like I made a job change that I didn't think necessarily through as much as I probably should have, which I don't think I would have done if I was, sober. I don't think I would have done that. I got caught in some lies, which, there you attribute them to like little white lies when you're using, but when you've already put someone through that and they know where it can lead, those lies probably are more significant than, I attributed them to at a time. And yeah, the other thing for kratom with me at the end, it was like I got to the point where it wasn't working, and I was either sick from taking too much of it or sick from withdrawal. So it was like this miserable existence. And I didn't I didn't want to get sober for a long time. That's why I probably relapsed so many times, because I really truly didn't want it. And it wasn't until the point that I started to think about, using hard drugs and drinking again. Like I found myself in a store and looking at a bunch of liquor bottles, like thinking bad thoughts, and like that stuff just adds up, and eventually it's the yeah, that didn't happen, but it could have very easily, I think.
So you think that like one of your wake up calls was that you were starting to turn to harder substances that you had previously gotten off of, and so like that was like a ding ding ding, this is a problem?
I had done enough recovery work, I think, at that point before I started kratom that I could recognize the signs. And I don't know if it's divine intervention or, sheer universal luck or just happening to be in a different mind frame. But I didn't make this step of, relapsing on hard drugs or drinking again. But I got very close, very close.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good example of how everyone's bottom can be different. I think I talked about this before, but like sometimes the programs can program into you like what something is supposed to look like. Like, oh, when you relapse,
yeah,
you're going to have a bender and you're going to have the worst time and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And like that, I feel like that programs people into thinking like, oh, okay, if I relapse, I get to go all out.
Yes.
Instead of like, if I relapse, then maybe it doesn't have to be all out. It could be a day and I could come back. You know what I mean?
No, exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So
the one other thing I wanted to say is it's so interesting that you say that, because I agree so much with that statement, because I remember I got sober for like 6 months when I was in my early 20s, and I went to an AA meeting, and at the time I'm like, it's all a bunch of people that are 20 to 50 years older than me that are all, addicted to cigarettes and sitting here smoking and telling war stories, and I don't have anything in common with them. I never got to any level as bad as, 9 out of the 10 stories I heard in here. So I don't have a problem, and that I didn't, but, that's what I learned. Now, I wasn't, probably in the right frame of mind to take the information in at that point. But, in any event, that's why I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that it can be dangerous to compare yourself in that regard.
Yeah. Discernment's important for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is good, and we'll get into the episode. I think it's a really interesting one, and yeah, thanks for chatting. Have a beautiful night.
You too.
Welcome. This is the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. My name is Charlie, and today we have an unusual interview. Ian works in sales for a popular kratom-kava brand, but he also has found himself addicted to the product. We appreciate you agreeing to be a guest on the show. So the company will likely not be happy for you being with us today and talking about these issues. So we've agreed to disguise your voice and to let you use an alias. But with that in mind, Ian, can you please introduce yourself?
My name is Ian, and I work for a popular company that produces a very, I would say, noticeable blue bottle. And I've been working with them for several years, and I have, over the years, getting addicted to the product. And to the point where I am now, it's gotten to where I needed to reach out and find help somewhere. And through chains of different events, I found myself here. but I'm just trying to speak out about this product and just inform the public a little bit more about the potential addictive nature of it, the dangers of it, and overall just tell my story with it.
Since we are primarily a quitting podcast, a kratom quitting podcast, we're going to start with that and that part of your story.
So I started doing these shots because I found them as a energy drink alternative, and that's what I was told that they were. I tried them for the first time actually before I worked for the company, and it was awesome. I'm not going to lie, it was awesome. And but it quickly went from I was introduced to them, and then it went from taking like one a day for a long time to then two a day. And then by that time, I was working for the company, and it quickly spiraled out of control, where having them just readily available to me, I went from taking two a day to 6 to 12 to some days I've taken 20. And where I am now is I've walked myself back. I've tapered because my plan is to quit at the end of March. I have a protocol laid out for it because I've tried to quit several times. I failed, but I've tapered down right now to 12 bottles. And it's one of the hardest things I've ever done.
You're not alone. That's why I started the podcast. I was just blown away by how hard it was to quit. If you listen to the very first episode, between January and March 23rd, this time of year, 2 years ago, I spent like $3,000 in a matter of 10 weeks. And I was doing a different product, and I was doing up to 5 of them a day, 6 of them. I was doing 2 at a time, and I would stop and then relapse. So you're not alone in that like surprise of, wow, this really can get hooks in you.
It's very deceptive, in my opinion, to market a product like this as an energy drink because of the way, as you said, it gets its hooks in you.
Have you had an experience where you've experienced withdrawals from it yet?
Big time. So as I mentioned previously, I've tried to quit a couple of times and just quitting cold turkey. And the withdrawals were unlike anything I've ever experienced. It was constant body aches, sweating, nausea, like I could not sleep. My legs, like just, I had that, restless leg syndrome or whatever. Like it was awful. And like mentally, I was not prepared for it. I don't doubt that I could do it, but mentally, I was not prepared for that. I wasn't expecting it. I was like, oh man, I'm going to feel like tired for a couple of days. But I felt like I was coming off hard drugs. I was completely unprepared.
Were there any other side effects that you've experienced over the couple of years where you've used this product?
So I was really big into strength training, have been for a long time. And I was always trying to push my limits with the gaining weight. And that way I could get my lifts up. And I basically found that impossible. I went from about 220 down to 190. That's not even the worst. That's just the first thing I noticed, because it's so hard to eat on them. And some people may find that beneficial, but that's only a good thing for so long, because the more you take this product, you become constipated all the time. Your skin is just, it's like you age more rapidly. Your skin becomes like a dry desert, like nothing that you put on it. I've tried every single kind of lotion you think you could buy. We have literally made our own lotion at home out of beef tallow, and it just, nothing helps. It's crazy the amount of things that it does to you, just mentally, like you can't sleep. So you'll go to bed at a decent time, but it's like you'll still sleep for 9, 10, 11 hours and still feel like crap when you get up in the morning, because it's like you don't fall into a normal REM sleep cycle. And that affects your mood, especially as that goes on throughout the days and weeks to come. And not having that sleep, you can't heal from certain things, especially if you're exercising. And it affects all aspects of your life. And if I sat here and thought some more, I could probably think of some more, but those are the ones that just come to mind.
As much as we focus on kratom on this podcast, this product, kava, is usually the culprit for the skin conditions in this particular drink. But one of the interesting things about you is you came to it from a person really caring about your body and your wellness. And it does hit some of these bodybuilders. I think it's because it's marketed to them, and some of you are open to some supplements. And that was your experience, right?
Absolutely. Yes. I just seen it marketed as an energy drink. And at the time I was going back and forth between energy drinks and coffee. So it was like, hey, this is an energy drink. Let's try it out. And I ordered it offline, and I'm here. Just wishing I would have known.
And what kind of exercising are you doing these days?
Same stuff. It's just harder to make progress. And so a lot of different powerlifting, some hypertrophy work here and there, but just deadlift, squats, bench press, cleans, things like that.
That's excellent. Some people, after a couple of years of this, discontinue the exercise. Congratulations on the discipline with that. Do you have a previous history with an addiction?
So I got introduced to marijuana when I was, 11. I think was the first time I smoked weed. And I smoked weed, all the way up until a few years ago. I was growing it, smoking it like crazy. But like in between there also, my early 20s, I got addicted to Adderall. And that was really bad, but I quit that cold turkey, and nothing like this. But also overlapping with Adderall, I got addicted to alcohol, and I was a blackout drunk for years. It was something that I struggled with so many times. I think because I kept track of my quitting for alcohol in an app. And I quit drinking, I think about 42 times off the top of my head. And it never stuck. And it was a religious moment that I had that actually stripped that thing from my life. It was something that I didn't withdraw from. It was just gone. Stopping the weed didn't bother me. It was more psychological. The Adderall, it was psychological. The drinking, I know drinking can have physical withdrawals. I've had other family members that have been addicted to alcohol and quit, and they've had physical withdrawals, but it wasn't something I experienced. It was just gone.
How long have you not been drinking?
8 years sober, and then, like an idiot, I convinced myself, this was a while back, but I convinced myself that, oh, hey, I can have a drink. I haven't drank in 3 years. It's like that line that all addicts tell themselves after so long. And I was going down to the beach with my wife, and I decided, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna drink just a couple of beers while we're down here. And then that turned into almost another full year of me drinking alcohol, and just completely screwed me up there for a while. But I quit. I haven't been tracking this sober period from alcohol, but it's been over 2 years now.
Our backgrounds are very similar, except I'm about 20 years older than you. We actually confirmed I'm the same age as your mother, which we won't talk about again. But I had the same 3-year mark of not drinking. Very classic. Oh, I can have a beer at the beach I tried the same thing that led to a year drinking. And then my last go around, I found kratom just a little bit after I quit alcohol. And for me, it's been about 5 years. I think it makes those of us with a previous addiction more at risk for this product. And I think they should be more clear that I think they market it to vulnerable populations. And I know sometimes it's like a booze alternative. It's a form of harm reduction. For some people, it can be, but it also can be just an easy transfer addiction or a substitute addiction if you have a previous history. And I didn't withdraw for any of that other stuff too. So that was the weird thing was this substance was like where I like, oh, wow, this is what withdrawals are. I don't think it was bad as like Train Spotting or anything, but it was like, oh, wow, I can really relate to that movie now.
Yeah, this is the real deal.
Yeah. Let's fast forward a little bit. And like many people, you heard about this product on a podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, given the sport I was into, I think I told you previously, like people tend to overeat and abuse steroids and things like that. And I listened to the Ben Greenfield podcast just because he always seemed to have helpful tips for trying to make progress in the way that I wanted, but staying healthy at the same time, I guess to the best of your ability. I know every person's different, but he tend to usually guide you in the right direction. So I was scrolling through Apple Podcasts one day and I seen an episode. I think the episode's been taken down, so I'm going to try and remember this correctly, but it was like new energy drink that's going to revolutionize the industry. And I thought that sounded cool because, like I said previously, I was drinking energy drinks at the time. And so I clicked on it, listened to it. It was an interview between him and the founder of the company. They sold me on it. So I got on the website and I ordered a pack of the bottles and they came in the mail. I took one out and I drank one. And no, I did not take just a half a bottle. I took the whole thing because when I pulled the bottle out, I didn't know this and I didn't remember them saying at the podcast, and there was no clear indicators on the bottle at the time because this was when they still had the silver caps. So I just took it out and slammed it and was just amazed at the effects that I felt. Now, and this was also something that I know and the founder of the company talked about in the podcast, drank the whole bottle. So with it, because I had tried kratom in just a normal ground form before that, and I didn't experience anything consider normal kratom that I did with this product. The euphoria of it was night and day.
As compared to when you took like a powder product in the past?
I had tried those and used those on and off for a long time. Maybe not a long time. Over, I guess you consider 5 years. It was like I would use them for a couple of months and then I wouldn't use them for a couple of months and I would go back and forth, but it never bothered me. I was told about it by a family member, essentially as a painkiller. And because I was doing CrossFit at the time, and it was just like, oh, we should try this because it like helps with your joint pain and stuff like that. But it gives you an energy boost. It could be a coffee supplement. So I was drinking like a kratom tea in the morning, and it wasn't anything crazy, just a couple of grams. But like when I ran out and I couldn't buy more, I just couldn't buy more. I didn't have any physical withdrawals from it. Nothing like that happened, but also the euphoria was not the same. The euphoria with this product is so much more heightened that it prizes you, especially if you've taken kratom products in the past.
It's very apparent from all the reports, and that's why it's popular and it's a well-selling product and it's convenient and it's available at some mainstream locations. So widely available kind of in a 5-hour energy package. And then it seems to hit your brain chemistry for most people in a way, whatever they're doing with the recipe. They do the same thing with fast food and stuff. They call it the bliss point. They have it somehow engineered in a way they claim it's just plain powder, but they're doing something. And obviously there's the mixture with the kava and they're potentiating it with pineapple. I guess we'll talk about that more later. But from this podcast, how did you find yourself after that and starting to use these working for the company?
They have this thing on their website that's like a store locator. And it was saying that it was at these stores, but every time I went, it was always sold out. So I ended up emailing the company, and then I got an email back with a job offer for the area, and it was already in the area. There were already people working in this area, but I guess they needed more people, which they're always bringing on more people, and I'm not sure what their turnover rate is, but that's how I got introduced. It's not like I was looking for a job from them. One of the sales managers reached out to me because I was just emailing them about, hey, these stores are on your guys' store locator page, and they're always out of product. Look, what's up with that? Hey, your salespeople either aren't doing their jobs. I got an email from one of the salespeople, and it turned into me working for them. It wasn't something I was actually pursuing.
That's very interesting. At that time, did they have that practice or that offer where if you went to their website and you went to one of their stores and it wasn't available, they would give you some free product?
It's actually quite a common thing for people to abuse that system because it can get expensive when you're deep in that addiction, and it's a common thing. Bottles in the case, they buy them, snap a photo, they get those 6 bottles, plus they get a box. I don't think it was when I started working. Could be wrong. Maybe I just didn't notice it or had never been hit with it. I'm not sure.
Maybe we'll talk more about some of those practices and incentives that they do later when we talk about their marketing and the way they sales. But now you're on the job, and I guess we'll just circle back. One of the things that they have in terms of if you're in sales, there's a way that makes the addiction affordable for you. And that's because they give you an allocation of samples. Why don't you talk a little bit about how that works and how that feeds your addiction?
So it's the allocation, I guess, is different for everybody because everybody's store count is somewhat different. But if you can have upwards to around 200 stores, for each store every month, you can write off 6 sample bottles per month. So you visit 10 stores in one day, and you write off 6 samples per store. You just wrote off 60 bottles to yourself. Oh, now I guess there's no real way of the company verifying. There's no real way for them to verify if you left the bottles there or not. It's just not a practice that they have in place. And just knowing how they operate, I don't think there's anything they could do to change the sampling process. It's the only thing, in my opinion, would just be to just get rid of it altogether. But it does create problems in many different ways because I know that there are other people like me in the company that are addicted to the product that just won't speak up about it. But I also know, and that problem is not addressed. It's never addressed. It's never talked about. It's never addressed. But the second problem is that people will write off samples and then sell the product under the table and just pocket the money. That problem, is addressed all the time because it just has to do with money. And I think that's when all is said and done at the end of the day, it's just all about money.
So if a store calls headquarters and says, hey, my sales rep is selling me these under the table, it gets reported that way, and then there's consequences.
I guess there would be consequences. Yes. Most of the stores, in my opinion, they're not going to do that anyway, because that rep is probably going to be selling them at a cheaper price they normally get them for. They would approach that store owner like, hey, I can give you a special deal this month, and give them an extra $5 off a box or something. And the store owner is going to be like, all right, sweet, and go from there. They're not going to be like, I don't know, this sounds fishy. Let me call corporate.
Okay. How does it end up being, other than it's a known practice, does the company do anything to crack down on it, or they just know that it's being done?
As far as their internal things they do up at the top, I'm not too sure of what their processes are. I know that there have been people fired for it. They do their own investigations into these things, but as far as how those things go, I'm not too sure about it. I just know that they do.
And the idea with the samples is you're supposed to drink one in the store with the store owner while you're on site, maybe give them a couple to give to some to bring in some new customers. That's the purpose of the samples.
Yes and no. Like it's encouraged to try the product with one, and not necessarily with the store owner, but just mainly it's with the clerks, the people that are working like the cash registers and stuff like that. Try and get them to try a half a shot or do it with them. But like the people that are working inside of the store, that you want them to try the product, because they are never going to, or you are never going to see the amount of customers that walk in and out of that store more than they are.
Yeah.
So it's all about getting them to use the product or using the product with them. But there's never any guidelines laid down as to just remember, guys, you're only supposed to have one bottle a day. It's just, hey, just try and do this. And there's never any restrictions put on it or any warnings, or the addiction of this product is never even addressed. It's never talked about.
What does your typical day look like when you're on this job?
My typical day, so it's not a bad gig. I get to make my own schedule. You have your route planned out for the day. They don't give you a route or anything like that. They treat you as your own business, which a lot of us are. Have our own LLCs and operate like that, but it's good in that way, because for people who don't like having a manager breathe down their neck. But you're on the road a lot, and you are in and out of stores, dropping off orders, doing store visits, and then trying to open up new accounts. You just have to get your stuff done for the month, but they do have your stuff done for the month as far as visiting all the stores that you have under your name. But they do expect you to open up new accounts and things like that. But it's a pretty laid job, but it can be hard to do when, even as easy as it is, it can be hard to do when you're as addicted to the product as someone like myself is, because when you're drinking that much every day, you take too much of it, and then you will get like double vision, and you'll just feel like very lightheaded, and you can't drive like that. It is so. It definitely put a hinder on the day, to say the least. It's like this stuff is like it has a voice in it. It just keeps telling you to take more. Very strange. It's very strange.
How many stores would you say that you handle?
Over 100.
And are they mostly vape shops or are they some gas stations too?
It's a mixture. I couldn't tell you what the ratio is, but it's a mixture of smoke shops and gas stations. That's pretty much it. They've done a big push for corporate chains. They keep adding corporate chains. Circle K's and Murphy's are the big ones right now. But yeah, I don't know what else to say about that. It's just a mixture of smoke shops, convenience stores, or as they call them, C stores, and pretty much the same type of customer in each store.
Part of your job is restocking and making sure that they have enough product?
Yeah, you just make sure they have enough product and you fix the display up. And sometimes I've been in stores where they won't let you restock it, like the employee wants to restock it or the manager does. But most of the time, yeah, you just restock the display and you put up some signage, you try to push for better locations so that way it sells better and all that good stuff. But usually the people who find out about it, that it's there, it's like the location, it does make a difference sometimes, but a lot of times it doesn't really matter that much. It could be behind the counter on the floor. If they know you have it, they're coming there to get it.
Do you go to a central location to pick up the product, or do they ship the product to your home?
We all have what you call them, storage units. We all have storage units that we operate out of. So they ship the product to the storage unit.
Interesting. So I guess the models, it's called direct sales distributor or a DSD. Is there anything else you want to comment about that model because you're not an employee, you're an independent operator?
Yeah. The one thing I will say that is actually good is I think it's a good model. And there are actually other businesses trying to emulate this model. And I think for good reason, because usually you get more productivity, at least from my personal experience, what I've seen working with the company for all the years that I have, you get more productivity out of the people that you're working with because they don't feel like just tied down to a building or to a schedule or to anything like that. There's a lot of freedom in it, so it makes people happier. There is just obviously introducing the product into the realm that can make it dangerous.
Are you paid like on a commission or by the per unit moved?
And the commission it's all different tiers. I'm not going to sit here and bore you with it, but there's like tiers to it and all this craziness. They'll keep changing it too. It's just, it can never just stay at one. That's one of the frustrating things. It's like, it can never just stay with one thing. It's probably changed 10 since I've worked with them. That's an over exaggeration, but just slightly.
Okay. And one last question about this. Has there been any major big time changes in the process from since you began to now that just fundamentally changed the way you do your work?
We changed systems that we operate under, which I don't want to disclose, but we had a pretty just cool, smooth system a few years ago that everyone liked and enjoyed. I don't know what the problem with it was, but they switched over to another system that just isn't as smooth, to say the least. And I know it was a big fuss when they switched systems, and it was at the time when the switch was made, there was no real explanation given. And recently, just another thing is after the first of this year, they essentially made it harder for people to earn the commissions they were previously earning, which I know has frustrated a lot of people. I know have left the company because of it. They are constantly making changes within internally that is sometimes hard to keep up on. So I try to do my job and earn my money and stuff, but it's like A lot of times they just keep setting different bars for you to reach to make the same amount of money that you were making beforehand, with it depending on where you live in the United States. It's almost impossible to do that. If you're in a more populated area, it can be easier. If you're in a more rural area, it can be much harder. So it's not, the US is not a uniform place. It's like we're all different here. We live in different places, and it's not something that you can just do across the board and expect the same result out of everybody. It can be, I know it's been frustrating for a lot of people.
Okay, I got it. A question more aligned with the addictive nature and the way this presented to the average customer. What are your marching orders about how you tell the store, like, what's in the product? Is there a protocol for it? In general, they really have this kava forward way of presenting their product. And there has been some debate about whether or not they hide the kratom contents. But when you take this to a store, what are you supposed to be doing when you are, how is that the ingredients? How do you inform the store clerks about that?
Yeah, you're right. They do try and push it like more as a kava forward product. But like when you go in there, we're supposed to say that it is a kava tonic. But like when they ask about the ingredients, we don't hide the fact that it's kratom, but they constantly push us to say that it's whole leaf kratom. There's a whole leaf kratom because, and essentially say that makes us different from kratom concentrates because of you get a full spectrum of the alkaloids, and they try and make it seem healthier people by saying, no, this is a full spectrum kratom. Like you want to get some CBD supplements or something like that, and you're just like, oh, I'm going to get a full spectrum CBD because that's just, I don't know, that just sounds better. I don't think it is, personally, from my experience now where I am, but they push us to say those things without really giving us any education on it. It's just, you say there's whole leaf kratom in there, and it's like full spectrum. You're getting all the good alkaloids out of it, and not just the ones people isolate to get high off of.
Yeah. And that's very aligned with the overall advocacy movement. There's this big push from the lobbyists down to the individual people that promote this is whole leaf kratom is safe and non-addictive. And so it sounds like this company really has focused on that. And I agree, when I've used this product, it seemed very synthesized. It seemed like it was very processed. It wasn't like just a dried leaf. I guess it's possible that all the alkaloids that are in a plain leaf are in there. I haven't personally tested it or looked at the lab results of that, but I think it's disingenuous to call it a whole leaf product. It's liquid but I guess they've come a little bit away when you go to the company's website from circa 2021, when they first sold it, they didn't have any mention of kratom and they didn't have any ingredient results. And then slowly over time, they've been more transparent, at least on the website. If you click enough, you'll see the amounts of the kratom and stuff, but that is...
It seems to be a trend that they've had throughout the years. Like now actually looking more into their background and the history of this product, it's like the kratom has always seemed to be try and hide it. And once they started getting called out for it, then they just tried to like pretty it up. Oh, it's whole leaf kratom. It's a full spectrum. You're getting all these really good alkaloids and that makes it not addictive for some reason. they're not completely honest with their advertising.
I agree with you. And I've heard the founder speak. I have to call it a kava drink because the FDA requires you to list the ingredient that's the most in the product by volume. Kava is the biggest ingredient. And so that's why I'm just following the FDA rules. And I know that's part of their marketing. When you go to sell it to a new store, part of that pitch you've told me is that they make a big deal that they have a FDA facility that's inspected by the FDA, right?
There are store owners that actually do their due diligence as far as looking it up and things like that. And usually those people will have questions. And I, on several occasions, have had talks with store owners who are concerned about the efficacy of this product. And one of the lines that we are given to dish out to them is, we're the only product that's produced in an FDA facility here in the US. And that's supposed to like put their mind at ease. The FDA, this is not an FDA approved product. It's in a supplement category. Supplements are approved by the FDA. Maybe the facility is, and that's cool. That's great. But it's almost like you're trying to make them think that the product itself is FDA approved by the lines that you're told to say to these people.
I think it's disingenuous or misleading. Is there anything else around the way you promote the product when you try to get a new store to take on the product, things that you're told to say?
About the product itself, no. We try and explain it around the parameters the company tells us to, but man, I don't even know. When I first got on board, one of the guys that I worked with, he was, oh wow, and this was a sales manager. He was like, when he trained me for several days, and we'd go into stores, and this guy would just tell people stuff that was straight up illegal. He would tell people like that like they could give this to autistic kids because it would help them be more social. That if you were on any sort of ADHD medication, you could use this product as a substitute for that. And yeah, and he actually coached me in ways of saying this. Like he flat out said, this wasn't something that came as a guideline from the company. I'm just saying it was this guy who is no longer with the company. Yeah. He left on his own accord, to my knowledge. But he said to me that you could use this as a ADHD supplement medication, and you would give this to autistic kids for breaking down social barriers. And then essentially said to say to the store owners that, hey, this isn't, and this is, I'm going to try and say this correctly, this isn't something the company tells me to say. However, I've heard from insert made up person that they gave this to their autistic kid and this positive thing happened. Or my insert made up buddy took this in as a substitute for Adderall, and now he's completely off. He told me afterwards that I can't say those things because it's illegal. Claiming that it actually it treats specific diagnoses. You just can't do that with supplements.
When supplement sellers say that on their website, at least there's some evidence of them doing that. And sometimes they'll get warning letters, but probably if they're in the field making medical claims, there's less ability to enforce it. And it's a way for them to get away with that. I know that you have a full wrap on your vehicle. What is that like driving around with the product on all over your vehicle?
It can be good and bad. Like, I've had people follow me, and like people who are addicted to the product, but they just want free stuff. But I also just had like business owners, they just walk up to me randomly and just, oh, hey, what's that? And it sparks a conversation. So in the interest of just like business, it's good, but it also draws a lot of attention because it's very flashy. And I wish I wouldn't have gotten it done.
Okay.
It is what it is at this point. But that's one of the strangest things I found is the lady followed me. I just noticed the car following me is all. And it actually turned out to be a lady that I knew. Yeah, she seen my car and she followed me to another store. And she just wanted free product because she didn't have any money.
She's spending all her money on this product. This is a good segue. Do you feel comfortable talking about that customer and what you observed with her and how the product affected her life?
Yeah, I'm going to give her an alias. So I'm just going to call this individual Katie. No, Katie personally, I had never met her. I would go and restock a store like it was in a strip mall, and a couple of stores down from it was like a Subway or something. The clerk there would tell me about this lady named Katie who would come in there and buy these 2 different shots like this. And she would drink 2 of one and 1 of the other before she left the store, but she would buy them in very large quantities. One day, I actually witnessed this. She was in there buying her supplies for the day as I was in there restocking the store. And it was just, she looked much older than what she was. I asked the clerk there how old Katie was. And she said that she was like, I think, 37 at the time. And yeah, I've seen her at other locations over the past year or so, depending on where I'm at. But yeah, I've just seen her deteriorate. The lady is walking like literally with a cane. She's had 2 seizures. Now, I'm not going to blame all of these issues on this product. I'm not. But one of my buddies, Ryan, he owns a couple of gas stations in his stores. And he's known her since she was a teenager. And I guess she used to be on drugs. And she got sober, got off them, was sober for a long time. And he was saying to me the one day, man, I just don't know what's happened to her. She's not on drugs that I know of. I just don't know what's happened to her. And it was just like, this product has happened to her. It's sad. She's not the only person. She's not the only person that I know that has struggled with being addicted to this. She's probably the worst case.
Yeah.
I have seen it in person, but there's a notorious guy that the owner swears up and down drinks 2 boxes a day, 24 bottles. And he actually went to the hospital. He went to the hospital and was there for 2 weeks. They wanted to keep him as an inpatient rehab. And he was there for 2 weeks and just decided to leave on his own. And he's doing his own. He's back to the same 24 bottles a day.
Yeah.
I've never met this individual in person. I'm just taking the short end of the word for it. It's mind blowing to see what some people will do for this product. I've seen people like pawn things. It's crazy. It's like it's being on drugs, legit, like hard drugs or something.
As a self-help podcast, we believe in self-responsibility, and that's the main focus of our podcast. Is the addiction largely rests with ourselves, but there's some issues with the way these products are marketed and the deception and this idea that it's just like Red Bull. That is just a fiction that needs to be struck from the narrative of this. A company doesn't want to do that. But the reality, and I know some of the reasoning is they were already addicts. So we're doing them a favor. At least they're addicted to this. This probably won't kill them if they were buying fentanyl off the street. That no, that's some of the reasoning, if they will even acknowledge that. And they'll say this happens 1 to every 100,000 customers or something, but that's not true either. It's way more common than they're acknowledging. And I think they're making a lot of money off people, these high volume users. That's a big profit, 24 a day from one user. I guess it's America. Capitalism rules the day.
You're right. A lot of money is being made, just for sure. As far as and let me say this, and that's always the incentive given to go out and sell more, with the addiction issue never being addressed. And when I say never, I literally mean I have never, ever heard them talk internally about potential addictiveness of this product. It is always sell. That is it. Which I agree with you that it's irresponsible to compare yourself to something like Red Bull, 5-Hour Energy. Like internally all the time, they refer to themselves, or like when we're selling to stores, they instruct us to refer to ourselves in air quotes here, energy drink category, that we're like an energy drink of some kind and not I don't even know what you would classify us as. But this is, I think anyone who's drank energy drinks, just caffeine in general, like you may quit caffeine and have some caffeine headaches for 2 or 3 days, but you don't got to go to inpatient rehab for quitting Red Bulls. And this is completely beyond serious medical problems from product because they think it's something that it's not. There needs to be more information given about what the potential side effects of this stuff is, of what the potential like addictive nature of it is, especially to people who are addicts or former addicts. If you are a former alcoholic or just pick an addiction, it doesn't matter, and you pick up a product like this thinking that it is just an energy drink, that's the way they market it, is just like a healthier energy drink or energy shot, and you think, oh, I'm just being healthier here, and then 2 weeks goes by and you find yourself hooked on this stuff. You were deceived. And you were deceived there. You thought you were getting something that you weren't. And these aren't well-known compounds here in the United States. We do have a history of trying to hide the kratom or sugarcoat it.
It's very intentional. And kava in general, even though it might be a little bit more niche, has a better safety record legitimately. There's less incidences of side effects and addiction. There's some concerns maybe about liver stuff. There's a debate about that. But in general, kava is on its own, they claim, is not, it can be habit forming, but you never hear of people going to rehab for kava shells, and so they're trading on and we had a whole episode about this, decoupling kratom and kava, but they're trading on kava's better reputation, less controversy by focusing on that. But yeah, the whole like this promotion as a wellness product, and people are deceived, and it is, I know that they want to normalize it, and when you have a product, you want to have it be all upside and rainbows and ponies. But some of the things, like when these products can be dangerous, is actually when it interacts. If you're on certain prescriptions, you're on those prescriptions and you take this at the same time, that's when people have seizures. That is when people are hospitalized. And that, or if you're pregnant and you're dependent on a product like this, your baby can be born to have withdrawal syndrome. They're basically born in with dependent on it themselves. So in my opinion, it's more a substance like a drug as opposed to a food product. And I know it gets all tied up into the debate about should it be banned and how do you regulate it? And that's why there's this massive insistence that it's just a simple food like caffeine, but they're going to continue to have people like us and that poor lady that worked at the subway.
One thing I wanted to touch on, but it's their advertising, their marketing as well. I'm speaking internally. The addiction aspect of this product is never addressed. Literally never. But it is funny to me that they brag internally about all of these social media advertisements that they do, but they don't want to get feedback on it. It's very strange. It's if this product was what you say it is, and it's just this alternative energy drink wellness shot, you would think that your comment section would just be full of just positive comments. And you and I both know that's not the case. In fact, they don't have comment sections on their ads because it's deceptive, and people have come to, I don't want to say have a vendetta against them, but they're trying to get them to be more honest. Ad itself is deceptive, and you need to be more honest with what you're doing.
Definitely. I think that's a big tell. And if anybody in corporate is listening, turn on your comments and your ads and let's get some reality. I know that there are some happy customers, like anything that's habit forming or addictive or anything that creates dependency. Not everybody has a bad experience with it. Almost anybody that takes this for 2 weeks will have some form of withdrawals after they cease taking it, just because that's the chemical nature of it. But not everybody will escalate their use or pawn their stuff off or have an inability to quit. And I know there's anecdotal reports that, hey, I use this and I stopped drinking. And I'm not doubting that there are some incidences of that. That shouldn't erase the negative stuff too. And then all the negative stuff that happens, it shouldn't be like the people that negative stuff happened to are bad people and they deserve those bad things happening to them, because we need to have individual responsibility, but we need to have some corporate responsibility. That's my point of view.
Especially like being a former addict, you aren't that this has the potential to do that. Like when I first quit drinking, I didn't even use hand sanitizer because I didn't know what would trigger this craving of alcohol in my body. It's like there were things that I avoided that it had addictive qualities to them. And if I would have known that it's just, oh, hey, this can be particularly addictive because of the mixture, the possible fermentation, whatever it is, I would have avoided using it, or not used it in the quantities that I did, but probably just not used it at all, because I tend to be someone who overindulges in things that really make me feel good. So it is, but causes a physical dependency on it. It's like I said earlier, that little voice. It's just, I watched that report that Scott Carney did on all this stuff. And he was saying, like, he had never tried it before. And he was saying he only took half a shot. And he was saying, like, after it started to wear off, he had that little voice on the side of his head. It's just, come on, you just take that other shot, that other half of that shot, man. and you start feeling good again. It's crazy. It's like it's possessed by a demon or something.
Have you had incidences of particular stores like getting wiped out of their inventory because of certain customers really buying a lot of the product?
Oh, yeah. That's something that happens frequently. And this, in my opinion, speaks to the addictive nature of it. So you'll open up a new account, and these accounts, like, they won't sell any product for maybe a month or two. It'll all just sit there on the shelf. And then, out of nowhere, it's all gone. And you're like, what the heck happened? And they're like, and you'll go back and you'll talk to these clerks. We have 2 or 3 people now that buy 5 or 6 a day. And that's what it turns into. It's never have 20 different guys and girls who come in to the store and are getting their monsters or Red Bulls or 5 hours or whatever for their shifts at work. It's less than a half a dozen people who are buying a half a dozen or more bottles per person. And that's each day, every day, when you're only supposed to have 1 bottle per 24-hour period. It says it on the back in extremely small print, but the average bottle consumption per person is definitely, I would say, between 4 to 6. Because I ask the clerks that myself. I say, hey, this is picking up, I see, because normally it's like you'll go in there and a couple of them will be gone. And I'm like, oh, okay, the product's starting to move now. So that looks good. What's your customer base look like? And they're like, oh, it's just this one guy. Or it's just a handful of people. And it's essentially the situation I just described. And then it's just, bam, it's all gone. And, knowing what I know now, because of my own personal experience, it's not because of, oh, this product is just gotten so popular in this area and you have, oh, I got to have before I go work at the Ford factory or at the hospital or something. No, it's people who are now addicted to this product. You may work at a hospital or Ford factory, I don't know, but it's just a handful of people and they're buying half a dozen at a time and wiping the store out. So I experience that all the time. Stores just getting cleaned out.
So it is a small number of users buying a large amount, high volume, rather than, like you said, dozens of people drinking 1 or 2 a day.
Yeah. That also creates some hesitancy with the store owners themselves, where I've ran into problems where you're trying to convince them to buy more product for the month. And they were like, look, dude, like we only have a couple people buying this. We only have a couple customers. So what happens if I buy 50 boxes from you and 2 of them move away, or 1 of them dies, or they stop buying it, or they switch to something else? Then I'm stuck with all this product because no one else is buying it. So it's, I don't know. It can be a difficult situation sometimes.
When I was buying it a couple of years ago, in general, there was one store that would do 2 for $15, or normally it'd be like $10 each. Is that the price range of them still? And in a case would be between 80 and 100. Is that still the going rate?
Our average price is like $8.99. The cheapest I've ever seen it for was like $6 or $7, I think. But yeah, it's typically about $8.99 a bottle. That's at least what we recommended the shop owners to sell it for. And the profit margins are actually like pretty sweet. For the store owners, I don't want to give out numbers here, but part of our selling techniques are there is literally nothing in the energy drink section of that cooler that you are going to make the profit margins that you do off of nothing compares. We beat those profit margins every day, all day long.
And so there's an incentive for the store to try to move them. It makes them happy. It helps their bottom line if they're moving a lot of this product.
Yeah.
A listener a couple of months ago sent me a picture of an advertisement of this being sold at Walmart. And I'm looking on Walmart's website right now, and it says that I can buy a case of this at Walmart. Is that the case? That are you aware of that? And do you service Walmart?
No, they don't sell it at Walmart. The corporate stores they have right now that I'm aware of are Circle K and Murphy's. So I guess Murphy's is usually connected with Walmart's, but it's not like inside the store. It's like at the gas station.
Okay, got it. Over time, the product has changed. There was the original formula, and then there was a newer formula that seemed less potent. And then now they have a classic formula that has the kratom, and then they have another formula that is kratom free.
Oh, yes. And they honestly, they just made this like super confusing in my opinion. But so from what we are told internally, the product formula has not changed. It's the same product. That's what we are told. Original kava kratom formula, just the normal, that's what it was. So for the states, for listeners out there that aren't aware of this, there are states that kratom is illegal in. I don't know them off the top of my head. So they released a product to be marketed in those states, but also alongside the original formula as well. So they switched the bottle of the original formula instead of just keeping the silver cap on the original formula, they gave it a black cap and called it the classic version. And then they gave the new version the silver cap, which made like no sense because it just confused people. And I had stores for a long time saying, no, we want the silver cap. We want the silver cap, because they thought I was giving them a different product. And it just, as far as I know, it was the same product. It was nothing in the formula had changed, but it didn't make any sense to me why you would change the color of the cap and then keep it, like you would not just change it, you would switched it. It would have made more sense to come out with the new product with the black cap, which it wasn't really successful anyway. So yeah, I don't even think they're running it anymore. Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, so the kratom free version that had the different other lion's mane and cola nut, that isn't actually a product that's big anymore?
Yeah, no, not that I'm aware of. I don't live in a kratom free state, obviously. Maybe they just market it in those states.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely. It basically just boils down to the classic tonic.
Got it. All right. Let's see. Is there anything else about just the way it's marketed, labeled, promoted that you find questionable that we haven't talked about?
I think we've covered a lot. I think the company needs to do a better job at explaining that they are not an energy drink. It's like saying cocaine is just a little boost of energy. Like, it's an extremely addictive product. You can go through physical withdrawals from it. I think there needs to be actual warnings about those things, because people, like, everyone knows what alcohol is. You're not going to go into a liquor store and the people in the liquor store don't say, oh, hey, this is a bottle of Coca-Cola, but it's actually Morgan. It's like, you go in there, and we all know that alcohol can be bad, that it can be addictive, and that you have to watch what you're doing with it. this product in particular, people aren't that familiar with it. So I think it's more dangerous to not warn people about, hey, there are some potential addictive properties to this. And if you have a past with addiction or anything like that, you should really look into it before you try it, instead of just going out there and trying to push it on the public as an energy drink. And I do think, just to reiterate what we said previously, I don't know if any one of the guys up there are listening, or girls, but you don't have to take anything that I'm saying. You don't have to take my word for it. Turn on your comment section in the media and so on social media. Just turn it on. And just read what people are saying about this stuff. You'll get a whole new perspective. People who have suffered greatly because they were misled.
I agree with you. I think it's unknown. So people who don't know anything about kava or kratom kind of walk in blinded. And then if there is any promotion of the product, it's false, misleading stuff that it's wellness or it's like a energy, and the addictive nature is totally glossed over. I guess the money question that everybody, and if you followed Scott Carney's video, is, do you know what they're doing? I know you don't work in production, and we know it's a combination of the kava and the kratom potentiated by pineapple, but do you know what it is that's making it more euphoric, as you call it?
I don't know exactly. I have my suspicions. My suspicions being that the kratom is fermented. And the reason I say that is because I have received several shipments, not recently. Let me backtrack a little bit. Up until I think about a year ago, they used to send temperature trackers with every pallet of product that they sent to us. And we were supposed to essentially take those temperature trackers out and then drop them in the mail. That way they could analyze them and make sure they stayed at an adequate temperature. And if there were some sort of mistake or major fluctuation, especially with heat, that they could correct that. And that was usually done by swapping the product out because the product would over ferment. I have had it. It wasn't a requirement to send these in. If they essentially did a compliance report every week, or not every week, it was like bi-weekly or monthly. I don't really remember how often exactly we had to do this, but it was at least once a month. And they would send out like a compliance report of people who had sent in these temperature trackers. Personally, I wasn't always the best at doing it. It was like 50-50. But I had received products several times that you've used the product, right?
Yeah.
So you take it out and you're supposed to shake it up and crack it open, and you're only supposed to drink half a bottle, but that's not always the case. But regardless of that, I would shake up the bottle, crack it open, and the whole thing would fizz out like a bottle of Coke. Like you shook up a bottle of Coke or something. And to me, that I didn't really think about the intentional fermentation at the time, but like it was said to us at the time that the product would ferment at specific temperatures. So I had the temperature trackers, but they don't include those anymore. They no longer do the temperature trackers. So I think that they are fully aware that of the changes in the kratom when fermented versus not fermented. I also think because of how involved they are in that world of kratom in particular, that they obviously know that it is more addictive in a fermented form because it's more potent, and that there is no labs that I have found that can test for these things, that can test for the I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name, man. You might know it. You might be able to pronounce it. I can't pronounce it, but there's no labs that can test for it, or at least do test for it.
It's a metabite that the process is similar to fermentation. It's a mitja pseudo alcohol. But yeah, that's my understanding too, that there isn't, even though that now there's a product out there where you can buy in a tablet form, you can get it as a tablet. So it seems like they should be able to test for it. But that was the last time I checked, they can't test for it. And so that is the collective theory, is that it's some type of fermentation that makes it more addictive. And there is science when it is in that form, it binds to your opioid receptors. There's more affinity to it than plain leaf kratom. Nobody's got a smoking gun yet to prove that's what they're doing with the product. And now they've been on the market for 5 years now. And yeah,
I will say this. Yes, there's no smoking gun, but coming from the inside of the company here, they have warned about the problem with fermentation. They may not even be doing it like by adding a small amount of yeast or something like that in order to induce fermentation, but there is obviously something about the concoction that they have that will induce fermentation at specific temperatures. So they're obviously aware of it, and they're not interested in tracking it anymore. And as far as any changes being made to that not happening, they've never spoken about. I think that's probably the right road. You're headed in the right general direction, but yeah, like you said, there's no smoking gun.
Couple of last questions. I know at some point you started to feel like you had a moral dilemma, and that's one of the reasons why you came on the podcast, along with wanting to quit. Do you want to speak about that?
Oh, yeah. So once I realized that I wasn't selling an energy drink, I started to see what this product was doing to people's lives. Because it's not just the girl I spoke about earlier, Katie, or the guy that I've been told about by the store owner or myself. Like I have family members that have dealt with this addiction, and I blame it on myself because I was the one who sold them on it. I was the one who was like, "Oh, this sweet new energy drink, check it out." I've had family members get addicted to this stuff per my recommendation, and then given my own experience, all of that stuff just accumulated to the point where I was really struggling with quitting this product. And one of my family members, and all of that stuff already had me questioning, what the heck is this? And one of my family members, they said, "Hey, there's a subreddit that's completely dedicated to people struggling with this stuff." And I said, "No, I didn't get on Reddit at all." And they were like, "Yeah, you really need to check that out." And I did. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is bad. It started to just make me feel like a drug dealer rather than a Pepsi rep or something. And don't get me wrong, I don't think kratom should be banned. I don't think the blue bottles should be banned, but there needs to be more information given about what these are. The deceptive marketing practices need to stop, and the company needs to market themselves for what they are, in my opinion, which, and to be honest, I don't even know how you would phrase it. but it's definitely not an energy drink, and it's definitely not a wellness tonic. That's not what it is.
Yeah. And we probably have a steep road ahead of us because we know that they published a study recently of people taking a couple doses of this over like a couple handful of days and then published it to say that there wasn't much of withdrawal and it wasn't addictive. And so that's the direction they're doubling down on that.
Oh, yeah. And that's something that they have instructed us as salespeople to use in sales techniques. Like when those store owners or the owners of chains are doing their due diligence and they're looking into this product, and so this product has kratom in it, and it's highly addictive, and I'm seeing all these things, and you like, oh, we have this study that says it's not. And it's like I said, you go into any one of these stores and you say, hey, how many bottles are you selling on average to your customers? It's maybe half a dozen customers or less, and it's half a dozen bottles at a time. And so that is, I don't care what your self-funded study says. The duration of it is not as long as it needs to be. And to me, it's just like a fluff piece to win people over. Because a lot of the corporate chains have hesitancy to bring it on. At least at first they did. They had a lot of hesitancy because of is this product safe or not? Once it gets into one place, the ball starts rolling. Oh, Circle K has it. That must mean it's really good. And the ball starts rolling. But I actually do want to say one more thing just about that. Some people from corporate are listening. And guys, like, you guys know what this is. You guys know the addictive properties of this, and that you have people out there who are it's not just me. I personally know several people who work for this company that have these same issues. And this is something that is never spoken about. Not only is it never spoken about, but you guys offer no avenues for people who are struggling to approach their higher ups with the problems that they may be facing. Because sometimes, like, I didn't plan to find myself in this situation, and I'm sure most of these people didn't either. And I think that if you guys are going to actually make some changes and be the awesome company that you portray yourself as, then you should probably treat the people that you work with that way too. And along with these changes, you need to make the changes internally. And yeah, I would just like to see some avenues open up on the inside to where people aren't going to be afraid of losing their jobs by going to the people higher up on the ladder and saying, hey, I have developed a problem with this stuff and I need to get off of it. And I don't know how you would structure that. They have their own way of doing things, but I think it needs to be done, because I think that's one thing that keeps people stuck in the cycle. Is it's a good job. It can be a good paying job if you go out there and you do your work and stuff and you make progress. But if it's something then that you don't want to lose, you're chasing the money. And it's just, if I take X amount of time off, then I'm going to lose my job. Or if I go to one of the corporate people, I'm going to lose my job, because they're going to know that I've been taking these samples I've been writing off and using them myself. It's just, there's that fear. There's that underlying fear. I've spoken with people about it.
Yeah.
So I just hope something changes in that realm.
And yeah, it might be a cutting edge corporate wellness program where they acknowledge that, especially if they're going to keep the formula the same, that a fair number of their workforce and are addicted to it. And one of the ways they don't have to bear the cost of it is they're not providing you guys health care as independent contractors. Any time off or any expenses that you have in the medical realm, you got to bear yourself.
Exactly.
But that would be if they just the humanity of treating their own workers and to have empathy and care for them. And that's the hallmark of any good corporate HR program.
I agree.
Even capitalists know that. You make more money by investing in your people. And if your people are having the dependence on your own product, that's a big issue. Before we end today, I just want to give you the floor to say any remaining things that are in the top of your mind. And I appreciate it. I'm going to let you have the closing remarks if there's anything that you'd like to say in closing.
I hope that anyone listening to this hasn't tried these little blue bottles or is in their beginning stages of it, like still thinking that, oh, hey, this is just a wellness tonic that gives me a pick me up, or that they need to do some serious research into this and maybe jump on that subreddit and just make sure that they're regulating their use. They're keeping things in moderation, because it's really easy for it to get out of hand when you don't know what you're dealing with. And I hope that they open up some doors so the people that do have issues can actually come forward honestly and deal with this problem. And I hope that the people out there that have issues with this product, I hope you guys get help and reach out for help, because I didn't think there was anyone out there that understood what I was going through, because it's such a niche thing. It's so weird to try and to describe to people that you're addicted to a wellness tonic. It just sounds weird. And I hope and pray that you guys get the help that you need and reach out. Like I said, get on that subreddit, because there's tons of people on there that are ready, willing, and able to be a support for you. And you're not alone. Not alone in this.
Thank you very much. And yep, our whole podcast, there's many episodes about quitting this product. There's a WhatsApp group. There's all sorts of resources. You don't have to do it alone. It is possible to get off this stuff and be better on the other side. So thanks a lot. And on that note, keep it kratom free.